welcome to the Gig Life Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. My guest today is drummer, composer, and creative mad scientist, Nick Gaffaney. Originally from Christchurch, New Zealand, now based in LA, with a career that's moved through jazz, free improv, cruise ships, the New Zealand session scene, artist residencies in India, and the heavy, uncompromising world of Cairo knife fight. In this episode, we talk about the shift from being a sideman to building your own thing, why Nick is putting focus back onto drums after years of production and songwriting, and the reality of chasing creative fulfilment instead of just the gigs. Nick also speaks very openly about his mental health, a late ADHD diagnosis, and what it's like finally feeling present after decades of just pushing forward through the darkness. This is episode 169, Nick Gaffaney. Here we go. All right, I think we're rolling. Nick Gaffaney, welcome to the Gig Life Podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. It's super exciting.
So you're in LA, right? And you've been there for quite some time. So LA's a big place. So where in LA are you guys based?
I'm in Hollywood these days.
Okay.
We just I came here in 2014, but then we did go to Vegas for a couple of years, and just came back the beginning of this year.
Okay, so what was the Vegas thing for? Was that with the band?
Yeah, I mean, my bandmate moved out there. He could sell his house here and buy something better out there for less money. So we thought we'll just give it a go and follow him out there, but it's really not the place for me.
Okay, so why is that?
I'm not a drinker or a gambler, for one thing. And it's also, I really despise heat. I really can't.
Yeah.
I mean, LA does get pretty hot, but Vegas is on another planet, basically.
Okay. Speaking of that, it's 40 degrees here in Sydney today. It's going to be 42, I think, tomorrow, Saturday. So, all right. So what's a day in the life of Nick Gaffaney in December 2025?
Well, it's definitely been a big change because obviously somehow Cairo knife fight became the only thing I was doing for like nearly 16 years. It didn't start that way. I was, a session and touring musician, that kind of thing. So eventually that kind of thing took over. And then in the last year or so, I've just kind of had a sea change in what I'm doing. And that band still exists, but I've definitely wanted to get back into my own sort of world as a drummer. So I'm doing a lot of that now because obviously for a lot of years I was worried about songwriting and production and other things. And now I'm back actually into playing the drums a lot. So I do a lot of practice these days. I found myself a pretty great spot to play, and I do a lot of that, to be honest. My wife's a tattoo artist here, so she's busy doing that. So there's a lot of downtime, and we don't have kids here, so it's a lot of practice at the moment for me.
That's cool. So and you're documenting a fair bit of that stuff on your Instagram and your YouTube now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm looking for something new. I don't know what it is. I guess some sort of solo kind of thing, utilizing all the skills that I've built up with knife fight. So I'm kind of figuring it out as I go and filming the process and learning new tools and things like that and seeing where it goes.
Okay, well, can I point something out then that I saw as new watching those videos? There's a video. I'm actually looking at the thumbnail of it right now, but you're playing and you've got your keyboard off to your left, but you've got your ride cymbal is in between your snare drum and your tom. It's not on a stand. That's the stand, and then you're playing that as a right. And then when you're lifting your leg for the kick drum, it's raising the cymbal off the snare and the tom to give it a nice little sort of nice little cool thing. I haven't seen anything like that before, so that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I love doing that stuff. That was always really useful when you were making people's records, that you'd have like a little things like that you could do, which would give them a different sound for their song that they hadn't heard before. It was always great doing that stuff in the studio, especially.
Yeah, and one of those other videos, your left foot, you've got your left foot on your hi-hat, but you've got another bass drum just off to your left as well, and with it looks like the heel of your foot while you're playing playing hi-hat and sort of barking the hi-hat, you've got a little kick drum thing going on with the heel of your left foot. So yeah, that's cool. I love watching that stuff because, yeah, there's so much content on social media, you know, all this stuff, and it's really easy just to see a great player with chops or whatever, or cool sounding drums, but if they don't have anything that's a little bit different, then it's a scroll up, isn't it? It's a move on. And what I've found with your stuff is I'm not doing that. I'm sitting watching all of it, which is cool.
Awesome. That's the plan, and sort of I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm sort of thinking broadly ahead that there might be a way to. Because I mean, when I started out, I was involved in like a lot of art projects and jazz things. So I'm thinking maybe there's a way to create something that can work in the art field, arts festivals, things like this. Just me collaborating with people. I don't know, but probably just find it organically. You know, a lot of hours just tinkering and see where it goes.
So outside being a professional musician over the years, I'm sure you've had, you know, jobs here and there. Have you had to step away from the music making and do like a 9-to-5 type sort of thing to get you by?
Yeah, that didn't really happen until I came here. I was pretty lucky, you know. In New Zealand, I was a touring guy and a session guy, and I was able to make living out of that. New Zealand was cheaper then too. But since I've been here, obviously, that just doesn't happen here the same way. It's an incredibly expensive place. So I've had a few jobs here, which, you know, are of a variety of kinds of things, mostly sort of part-time stuff.
Okay, and are you doing any of that now? Or?
Yeah, at the moment I work for a company that provides support for adults with disabilities, like usually autism or things like from that sort of ilk, mild intellectual disabilities, and I'm a supervisor, so I make sure that people are in the place with the families who are, you know, if their kid's going to college or whatever and they need, you know, in-class support, I make sure that our staff is in the right place. So it's a really flexible job, which is great. You can actually do it when you're on the road as well, because I'm not doing the mentoring anymore. I'm just a manager of people, really. So that's been a really interesting thing to do. A lot of the people who work at that place are musicians. My direct boss is a bass player, actually. So it's pretty cool to have that kind of thing.
That's fantastic, man. You know, and respect to you for that, because my youngest daughter is autistic. Mild autistic, and yeah, we work closely with our school and community and stuff. And if it wasn't for the people doing roles like you're doing, and you know, your team, it would certainly be much more difficult for us.
Oh yeah, and it's great. It's great that this here it's a service that families don't have to pay for here. It comes from the government here, so which is great. So, you know, families get, you know, a number of hours a week that they don't have to pay for, which, you know, is a godsend for people.
So you've said you've gone back to being. Is it more you're more of a sideman now, or are these gigs you're talking about where you're going back to playing drums and not so much, you know, not the car and knife fight sort of thing? Are you more of a sideman in different bands now, or you've created some new bands?
It's the thing. I came back here in March, and since then, you know, it was finding a place to live, finding a place to work, you know, musically and practice and stuff. So I don't really know what I'm doing. This right here is the transitional time. I'm not really out sort of looking for a lot of opportunities to play, I've noticed. I kind of was just sort of listening to my own life and going, I'm not really desperate to get out and find just sideman jobs. So I think I'm sort of tending now to more work on what's this next original thing going to be. I mean, Knife Fight's still releasing music. We've got enough music to release for about another 18 months, probably every month. We've recorded sort of 20-something songs. And, you know, that new thing we just released with Dave Lombardo came out a couple of days ago, and there's another one of those. So that thing just ticks along, really. So I don't really know what I'm doing at the moment, actually. If we did this same podcast a year from now, the answer will probably be very, very different.
All right, if you don't mind, man, well, let's roll right back to where it all began. I'm interested in how it all sort of began. I do know you were, you know, originally a jazzer, and I'm interested in how you get from being like a free jazz player to the stuff that you do with Choir and Knife Fight. So that how you got to that is that fascinates me. So, all right, so I know you're from Christchurch. So tell us a little bit about those early days in Christchurch. Do you have a musical family, siblings, and that kind of stuff?
No, I don't think anyone else in the family my brother plays a little bit of acoustic guitar now, I think, and my dad played a little bit when he was young, but by the time I was around, it really wasn't anything they were doing. And actually, I'm from Southbridge, which is, about 45 minutes south, sort of east of Christchurch. So that's had the same population my entire life, sort of around 900 people. It's never changed. So I came from there and went to school in Christchurch, and then it was the Christchurch Jazz School that really kind of changed everything for me. That hadn't been going that long when I started there. I think it had been going maybe 3, 4, 5 years by the time I got there. It was a pretty amazing place. It was in a building that leaked and had no soundproofing, and I think it had been used as some sort of factory building for something else. It was not really fit for purpose, which is why they moved to this new purpose-built, beautiful building the year after I left. But I got 3 incredible years at that place, it was so full of mojo, that building, and I was really lucky that there were really great musicians there at the time I arrived, because I didn't really know anything about music seriously at that point, and there were people in that school who really did. So I learned a huge amount from them. And it was really the only game in town. There weren't any other courses to go to unless you wanted to go to Canterbury University and study composition or classical music, which a lot of my friends did, but that wasn't really my jam,
Were you aware of anything sort of outside of the sort of Christchurch area?
I mean, it pretty quickly happened that way, because when you get into an institution like that, you learn about people that are at the other institutions. Very quickly learnt about Nathan Haynes, and Schiff Left and Joel Haynes and those guys from Auckland. Very quickly learned about that, because they were the guys who were really doing stuff in that scene. And I went into jazz in a major way. I just dove straight into it. It became the only thing I listened to and played for years and years and years. So when you're in that kind of environment, it becomes pretty insular. You don't really care about what else is being played musically in the charts or anything popular like that. In fact, it's a badge of honor not to be involved in that, jazz snob kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I think Nathan Haynes was the big thing that everyone was aspiring to, because he was the only guy we'd ever heard of who was actually doing it from New Zealand and had made a living and had gone to England and was like, wow, it's possible to do something like that. It was pretty amazing.
Can I ask you, are you into rugby?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm just thinking Southbridge, that's Dan Carter land, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Certainly is. And when I was a kid, though, it was Albie Anderson land, because obviously he'd been the great captain from there, and his stuff was everywhere. I wasn't really so much into rugby when I was young, because obviously, I went to a bunch of boys' schools that were like rugby schools. So you kind of very quickly get separated and not wanting to be around those guys being involved in that way. But as I became an adult, watching rugby and drinking beer is actually really fun.
Yeah, just when you said Southbridge, I thought, I think I want to ask that question. So we'll roll back a little bit earlier. So why was it drums? Did you see someone play, or did you hear someone, or was it a picture, or a VHS back then, or a show on TV, or why drums?
I started getting lessons when I was 6 years old, because there was a guy called Clary Light, who's literally a living legend. I think he's probably passed away now, but he was a living legend in Christchurch, because he went round to all the schools and pretty much taught everything. I don't think he could play anything really, but he could teach a little bit to young kids. And he came to our school, and he did a cover of the Blues Brothers, theme song, and just a drum solo kind of thing in the school hall. And I went out that afternoon and told my parents I was going to get drum lessons. I don't know what it was. I can actually still picture that moment exactly. I saw him playing this drum solo. In my head, it sounds like the greatest drum solo of all time, although I'm sure he could barely play. Considering he played literally anything anyone wanted to learn, he would say he could play it and then just teach people. And I went out and told my parents I was going to get drum lessons, and that was it.
That's awesome. My younger brother had a similar sort of... this gets me to how I ended up playing drums, but I don't know if you remember the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra percussionist Gary Brain. I don't know. Yeah, so he did like a school tour, intermediate school tour, and he came to my brother's school. I think I was third form at that time, and my younger brother would have been first form. And Gary Brain came to the school, and then my brother came home from school saying, "Look, I want to learn drums because I think they're awesome, and this guy was awesome, So, we ended up getting a drum kit at home, and I just used to sit in on my little brother's lessons and just come in and play after that. But yeah, it all comes. Sometimes it comes from just someone you see at school, right?
Absolutely, and he really would have been a great person to see because he actually was a serious player.
Yeah, he was. Cool. From the jazz school then, so you would have started to develop some dreams of becoming a professional drummer, and were you playing? I assume that through that jazz course you would be learning composition and maybe some piano and I don't know what other instruments and were you did you learn anything like sort of timpani or anything like that, or was it just more,
I've done a bit of that already, playing in brass bands and orchestras as well. I've done a little bit of that already, but at the jazz school, there was piano and composition and stuff. It definitely evolved into being a much more sophisticated course later on. Like I wish I was going there now, because now it's really highly codified, and you learn like the standard of teaching and instruction is really high. When I was there, it was a little looser, but it did mean that I could practice 5-6 hours every single day or year, which is kind of what I did. But yeah, there was a little bit of that. You had to play piano a little bit. I never really did as much as I should, and I regret that now. But it was definitely, that's where the kind of composition thing began for me, for sure.
Okay, so we've left jazz school, and so what was the first sort of port of call after jazz school?
Well, I became a father in my third year of jazz school. So I left school early and went to the jazz school when I was 17. And then my second year, I met a woman who was a tourist from Canada, and she was a lot older than me. She was like 8 years older than me or so. And we got pregnant when we'd only been together for a few months. So that obviously completely changed everything. She had to go back to live in Canada anyway. So then my life was between Canada and Vancouver and Christchurch for the next year. So when I left after my last year, I went on a cruise ship for a few weeks. I was meant to do a few months, but I absolutely hated being on a cruise ship. So I got off after 6 weeks and went to Vancouver, which is where they were, and I stayed there for as long as I could, really.
Let's talk a little bit about that cruise ship sort of ecosystem, because it can be fantastic for some people and not so great for others. Was it a small sort of cruise ship, or was it a big one? And how sort of often were you playing? And
I mean, at the time, it was the biggest cruise ship in the world. It was the Carnival Destiny. And I was lucky that I was in a jazz trio with two other really great musicians from Christchurch. I wasn't in one of the big bands. So it was the best possible situation to be in musically. And we played like 6 nights a week, 4 hours a night, and in the dining room or in this main atrium. But yeah, that kind of velvet prison thing they're the fun ship. So every week, because you do East Caribbean, West Caribbean, every week, nearly 3,000 new people would get on to just get wrecked for a week. And it was just so intense and crazy. And, some of the people who worked on that boat were amazing. There was a piano player there. I forget what his name was. He was from New York, and he was never getting off. He was like, I'm never getting off this. He was already maybe in his 40s when I met him, and he's like, I have a bed. I get paid in cash. I just live here. I don't want to go back to a city. I can't live on land. So he's probably still there.
That's cool.
In one way. Yeah. And he had a little solo piano gig in the Onyx bar, they called it, where he just played solo piano stuff, jazz and pop songs, and it was a wild life to think that you're just going to be doing that for 30, 40 years.
Right, and you don't remember his name, because we should go find him. We should go find where he is. I might get him on the podcast.
I don't, honestly, I probably could find out, actually, because I'm still in touch with the guys that I played on the band with, but, because some of those guys stayed on boats for 3, 4, 5 years, because you make a lot of money if it's all in cash and it's not taxed, so they did build up a bit of a nest egg and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a circuit here out of Sydney. I know a bunch of guys that have been on the show that, they're part of that sort of, it's like a revolving circle of musicians. If they're on tour with someone or if they come off tour and they've got a break, then they'll sort of switch out on the cruise ships that come into Sydney here. So, but I think, I think their contracts are quite short. They might only be 2-3 weeks at a time. So, I think they stay on knowing that they're coming off. Yeah, yeah. Did you get into Yep. Sorry, did you get into that sort of the lifestyle? Were you, was it playing and drinking and playing up and that kind of stuff, or were you guys the professional musicians?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a fair bit of that. There were some people on there who were really living their life. There was a reggae band from St. Lucia who were pretty much sleeping with every woman every week that they could on the boat, because there were these beautiful young guys from St. Lucia, and they just had no trouble with these American girls at all. It was just
those guys. They were those guys.
Yeah, and it was amazing. They never got caught because you weren't allowed to do that. That was off limits according to the Italian officers who ran the ship, but they never got caught, I think. So there was a fair bit of that from a bunch of people. But for us, so I guess it was, we were still doing things like practicing on the boat and kind of working out new songs, and we were pretty sort of serious musician types, for want of a better expression. It was kind of, that's one of the reasons I got off, is that I wanted to get to Vancouver and actually play music on land with different people. I wanted to get into a career, plus I needed to see my daughter and my partner at the time. So it was a blessing. That boat went into dry dock because it had cracks developing in its hull. So it had to go into dry dock to get those fixed. So I was lucky. I didn't have to do the whole 6-month contract.
Oh, right. So I'm going to say that's you out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. So you get to Vancouver, and then what sort of happens there?
Well, Vancouver is a real kind of creative music city, or at least it was then. I'm sure it still is now. So that was when I really first got introduced to free jazz and improvised music in that way. And I just dove straight into that there. At that time, it was, cold calling people. You just get a couple of phone numbers from someone. There was a guy on the boat who was from Vancouver who just gave me some phone numbers, and you just start calling people and going to see them at their gigs, and, buying one beer because that's all the money you've got, and just drinking it for their whole set and trying to talk to people and,
to get them to buy another beer.
Well, yeah, and just see if they wanted to play. And I started to get some opportunities like that. And it was a really great time. I made a couple of records there and did some really interesting touring across, it was my first experience actually doing proper touring. And it was a jazz tour it was a trombone, guitar, and and drums trio. And we went from Winnipeg all the way across to Vancouver, which is pretty much the middle of Canada, all the way across. And it was the middle of winter. And I didn't really know what that meant. So I was there in a thin jacket and sort of a thin pair of jeans. And the guys I was with when we landed were like, that's not going to work, man. This is even before climate change really sort of that has taken hold. It was 8 feet of snow in the middle of Winnipeg, and it was the coldest I've ever been. I was an idiot, but I was 20. I think I turned 21 on that trip. So
bulletproof.
Yeah, didn't really think about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so from Vancouver, so what sort of happened there? That it was time to head back to New Zealand?
Well, I mean, Canada didn't really care that I had a daughter, a Canadian daughter. They didn't really care. They were like, you don't qualify for any visas. My partner and I broke up. It was a horrible thing. I mean, it was a terrible breakup. I mean, there was one point I was bringing my daughter back from a trip to New Zealand. They didn't want to let me in. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? I'm holding an 18-month-old, and they were intimating that I could put her down and she could walk her way through herself. I'm not letting my daughter walk through security here, you fucking moron. What are you talking about? But then they stamped me for another 6 months and let me in. But it was, so that was pretty crazy. And I guess that's where, the next sort of 18 months were pretty weird, because I've always had really, really severe depression, suicidal thought kind of thing, mental illness sort of stuff. So that really hit home there at that point. So that's when I actually went to Sydney after a little detour in Europe, which went really badly. I ended up in Sydney for a few months. So it wasn't really until I got back to New Zealand that I actually got my life sort of back together a bit. So Sydney was just a lot of kind of, what am I doing? And it was the same thing, trying to meet musicians and play. And I made some good friends there. A bunch of people you've had on the podcast I saw that I met there. Haven't seen them in a long time, but it was as welcoming a city as you could have at that point for someone who was in the state that I was in. But I saw a lot of great music.
Did you have anyone here though? Like if you're going through that severe depression, did you have homies here you could talk to, or?
I had an uncle.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was it. I didn't really know anybody else. I had, a couple of friends who lived there that I'd known from Christchurch, but they were really living their own lives, and they were all sort of around my age, so they really didn't get the depth of what was going on because none of them had kids, and
Right.
So being 21 with a baby that you're not around anymore is incredibly traumatic amongst, just the general fact that my mind was obviously, diseased. And so it was very, very intense. And looking back on it, it was probably a very bad idea to be there. I should have just gone back to New Zealand, but I didn't want to go back as quickly as that. So I toughed it out there. It was white knuckling for probably 8-9 months, actually.
So where were you? Where in Sydney were you?
Surrey Hills.
Surrey Hills, okay, right.
Yeah.
It gets pretty dark in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean just, because a lot of trees and buildings and that kind of stuff, but there's certainly another ecosystem.
Yeah, and it was when I had to get a job, my first ever job, and I worked at a $2 store on Bondi Beach. So I had to take the public transport bus to Bondi Junction all the way out there, and it was run by a woman who was convinced I was stealing as soon as I arrived, and I wasn't. She used to just berate me about that, it was called Discount Bazaar.
Right.
It was horrible, dude. It was going there every day with this horrible woman who was just berating me, and people coming in and buying incense and batteries and stuff like that. It was weird, very, very weird.
Did you get to play with some people here though when you were here?
Yeah.
Get to some jams
yeah.
and sorry. What year? You said that's like late 90s.
That would have been 90, 98, 99. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I mean, that was the era. There was a lot of really great jazz musicians who were really at their peak. Guys like Carl Dewhurst and obviously Hamish Stewart and Simon Barker and Warren Trout, the great New Zealand drummer who's been in Australia for years. And so I saw those guys play a lot. And went to, what was it, the basement, I guess. I don't know, is the basement still there?
Nah, the building's still there. But no, I can't remember exactly when it shut down, but it shut down for a bit and then reopened and then, then kind of moved somewhere else, but wasn't the same.
I went and saw Terapai Richmond play there with Dig. He was the big guy. Everyone was like, he's such an out of it dude. He just surfs and plays drums, and how did he get so good? And no one really knows. And Dig with this kind of, Cameron Undia played with him too. And it was.
He's still like that. He's still that enigmatic, how does he do it type sort of thing, and still doing his thing. And he's still playing with the Whitlams, and he's
That's right.
Else. I've had him on the podcast. He was
awesome.
He's just a beautiful player, Ray. Just natural, man. Like
yeah, he was one of those guys. He loomed so large, but if you showed me a photograph of him, I wouldn't have a clue what he looked like.
Yeah,
I couldn't place him at all. He was just this guy. He's just it's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so what? So you decide to get out of Sydney and head back. So what was waiting for you there, and what did you do?
I mean, there was nothing waiting for me there either. But I went to Auckland, and that's where I got really lucky that the Auckland musicians that I'd known, I'd been in the National Youth Jazz Orchestra when I was still at jazz school. And so there were guys like Godfrey de Grue and Chip Matthews were in that. And that was the door that opened when I landed back there. Those guys were really in that scene. And that's where I formed a partnership pretty much almost immediately with Chip that saw us play, hundreds and hundreds of gigs and sessions together. And, he's an extraordinary bass player and musician. And he's one of those guys who he comes up with a bass part just on the fly that sounds like someone spent, 3 weeks producing it. It's extraordinary. And I was just really lucky. I landed in a scene that was fully formed and ready to go, that I already knew the individuals, and they just brought me in. And I started playing like all the time. And at that time, there were a lot of venues that were really just okay with bands coming up and pretty much playing fully improvised kind of beat jazz sort of sets, doing whatever they wanted. So we were able to do that, and I was able to actually be a part of a community for the first time since I left Christchurch, which was an incredible thing to fall into.
And then that sort of led you on to starting to meet some sort of players in the pop scene, I'd say, or that, or just, you started, jumping on gigs with, there was, like, you played with Annika Moore for years and played with Holly Smith. So is it from those sort of gigs you started making those contacts? And
yeah, I think so. Anika's gig was quite funny, actually. That one, I went to outrageous lengths to get that one. I don't even know why. She'd only just come out of the woodwork. She'd made that record in America with those great American musicians, and she was kind of just putting that out. And a friend of mine, I think it was Ben King, actually, or it might have been Mark de Clive Lowe, just said, this woman's coming out. You should try to get in her band because she's going to be playing everywhere. And I went to York Street Studio and recorded a whole lot of different things that I could play on the drums, different beats, different stuff. I put together like a press package, and I found out who her manager was, which was a guy called Tim Gronendale, who also managed the Feelers and a bunch of other things. And I found out where he was, and I sent it to him, and then I called him up. And I think I heard later that basically he'd gone, who is this person? Why have they sent me this? It's ridiculous because it's so over the top. He sent me this press release like I'm trying to get nominated for a Grammy or something. It's like, for your consideration, me.
Yeah.
Which no one does in New Zealand. It's too small a place. I don't know if anyone does that anywhere, to be honest. But he was so bewildered by it that it kind of made an impression. And Anika was like, okay, let's try this guy out. And I got an email from them, but I was already in India working as an artist in residence at this dance academy when I got it. And it was the most gutting thing in the world because I thought, that's it. I'm not going to get that opportunity again. I'm not in the country. I can't do the first gigs. And they said they were going to go with Paul Russell, who's obviously a great drummer. And, at the time he was playing a lot with Shea Fu, and he was a lot busier as a sideman, and I thought, well, that's it. That's done. I'm not going to have that again. So that was pretty heartbreaking, especially after all that ridiculous effort that I put in.
So, all right, we'll talk a little bit about the artist in residency in India. So, yeah, talk a little bit about that, how that came about, how you got there, and what that experience was like.
Yeah, that was extraordinary. I'd love to do more of that, actually. So now that I'm kind of trying to get back in the art world, that's definitely something I'm looking at because there are some of those residencies around which are pretty interesting. That one, there was a drummer called Nick McBride, who was a great Australian jazz drummer. He'd gone and done it, and I met him, and he told me about it. And so I knew that it was the Darpana Academy of Performing Arts, which is in Ahmedabad, which is kind of middle, sort of upper middle left in India. It's an incredibly dry part of the country and pretty inhospitable at times. But the Dance Academy was this amazing place. And, it's kind of a spot where, they were really welcoming and it was really easy to arrange. I just contacted them and said I wanted to come do it. Nick had recommended me for it. And, they had a place you could stay there. They had a cafe you could eat at. It was pretty wild, actually. It was, looking back on it, it was incredibly loose. You just kind of arrived and went there, and there was no sort of like, be here at this time and do what's going on and this is what we're going to do. You just kind of arrived and they said, well, I'm going to be here for a few months. And one of your jobs was to write music for the dancers. You did collaboration performances with them, and also kind of give some drum lessons to people who want to learn, drum set. That actually, while Nick was there, he got a drum set made by someone, a local artisan in the community, which they were incredibly proud of because obviously, at that time, I guess now there might be drum sets everywhere, but at that time there was not you couldn't just find a drum set in Ahmedabad. So he got one made, and it was, I forget what it was made out of, but I'm pretty sure it was metal. The whole thing was made out of metal. So it was, quite intense and metallic and full on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I also studied some dolok and mridangam hand drums and things. It was really an incredible experience. And I was fortunate that my girlfriend at the time was Indian, so she wanted to come too. So she went over there, and she had family, and so I did that for a few months, and then we just traveled around the country after that. But yeah, that was an incredible experience. That sort of artist in residence program thing. I think if any musician has an opportunity to do it, you absolutely have to.
So you said there that you were writing music, creating parts for the dancers. So how did that work? So did they come to you with we have this routine and it looks like this and we move like this. We need you to create a rhythm or a beat that kind of rolls with that. Was that the kind of thing you were doing there in regards to writing the music for them? And the other part of that was obviously it was you're trying to teach them Western rhythm and percussion, right? Because the India have their own sort of system, right?
Yeah, they do. There wasn't really a lot of that. Some people wanted to learn a little bit about drum set, but it was usually a lot more me wanting to learn about what they would do on a drum set to get more into, because obviously they have a very ancient, long-standing understanding of rhythm that's very different than ours and incredibly intricate and fascinating. And this is obviously pre-music streaming. So when I was there, I was able to hear a lot of Hindustani classical music, for instance, for the first time. You just couldn't really get that anywhere unless you ordered a CD or something. So that was everywhere. So I got a lot of stuff with that, and I had a mini disc recorder that I was making field recordings of things. So I got a lot of recordings, which I actually used on some of my first music that I wrote myself and released. So the dancers really, the stuff that I was working on was things where they were specifically doing modern dance rather than their Bharatanatyam, South Indian classical style, which is what they were usually doing. So I didn't have anything to do with that.
Okay.
That's very strict in how it works. So they were a school that was like, we have a modern sort of dance academy thing as well that we will put on some shows. And they had their own theatre there, which was outdoor theatre. There was a river on the back of it. It was incredible. It was like this red sandstone amphitheatre. It was outdoors. It probably seated about 200 people. And you just kind of collaborated with them and wrote it together, with the dancers, and you'd play things and they go, we could do this, we could do that. And, over the course of a couple of weeks, you end up having a whole sort of, suite of music.
See, I could see why you'd want to get back to something like that. I mean, that's filling a bucket for sure. Hey.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, right. So back from India then, and what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky that Paul Russell got another commitment. I think he had, I forget what it was, but he couldn't carry on with that. So I jumped into Anika's band, and then that was then the next few years where we toured Australia, opening for people like Chris Isaak, and played up and down New Zealand, and formed a lasting bond and friendship. I saw her actually when I went back to New Zealand this year. It was great to see her and catch up with her. We'll be friends forever. And that really was the thing that changed everything, because from there you get a lot of other opportunities where, if you're part of a club of people who are doing things, you get a lot more opportunity than if you're not fortunate enough to be there. So that led on to everything from there, really. And then it was kind of a whirlwind, really, over the next few years. It was just trying to do as much as possible. And you look back on it now and you think you probably should have paid more attention to what was happening. And obviously it was pre-social media, so you don't even really have an archive of that stuff. I've been keeping journals my whole life, so I do have written archives of things. But these days, you can put a location in your phone and it shows you all the photos you took there. So back then you couldn't really do any of that. So a lot of that stuff just kind of went by the wayside. I only really have the albums that we made and various things and recordings that happened. So probably should have paid more attention to it, because it was a really great time.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you didn't really allow yourself to take in that experience. You were just going from sort of one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and bulletproof and
Well, it was also, the mental illness. I think, I did the sums on it a little while ago, because last year I finally got medicated appropriately, which just changed my life completely. Mm-hmm. I did the sums on it. I think I was losing about 120 to 150 days a year, where I was either unable to get out of bed, completely just black for, a week and a half, or operating at sort of 10%, where, nothing really, you're just going through the motions. So when you think about, I've been a professional musician for 30 years, that's almost a third. It's like maybe 10 years of my life that I haven't actually experienced. And the stuff that you are doing, sometimes you're still only operating at 20%. And that was a lot of it, that I was on these gigs, on these tours that were really great, in these sessions. And I can read, in the journal entries from that time, I can read just how anxious and depressed and usually suicidal I was during those things. And you go, it's just such a waste of all of that.
Mm. So you're in a headspace now that you're, correctly medicated, that you're able to go back and think about that stuff. And so do you find the more you think about it now, you're starting to draw out some more memories from some of those things? Or have you written them off as, look, I just can't remember, they're just gone?
Well, it's a little bit more like my wife is very careful with me with this because one of the things that can happen when you've been, I think it ended up being ADHD was basically the diagnosis with, depression spiraling being the symptom that I got.
Yep.
And so obviously when a lot of adults get that, you get a lot of regret about the time that you've lost.
Yep.
So she's very cautious about me thinking about the past too much because she's like that, you can end up feeling a lot of regret, and that is the opposite of what you should be doing now. So I guess I don't really try to think about it too much because for that reason, obviously, and with Cara Knife Fight having the big thing with that band sort of not coming to an end, but sort of being moved into a different part of my life, is I probably should have done that a number of years ago because we were pushing to get somewhere, and we never really got where we wanted to. So it's easy to feel regret about the time that you have wasted by not being open to other things. So I try not to think too much about what was going on back then.
See, my mental illness is anxiety. I have what they call general anxiety disorder, which means, and this is before I was medicated and understood, because I studied the CBT about it all, and it was just the snowball thing. So for a classic example, I was playing cover bands, and I had a gig on New Year's Eve at the Greenwood Hotel, North Sydney, New Year's Eve, right? And I found out I was getting that gig 2 weeks before. So for 2 weeks, I got myself in such a fucking state of anxiety and what ifs. I must have driven to the venue at least 4 times between when I found out I was getting,
Wow.
when I got the gig. And this is what this anxiety was for me. It was just this. It's always the worry about what's happening, right? So in that, everything that you're actually doing in the present is completely forgotten because you're so far ahead now, right? And what I find now, I mean, I've had it under control for many years now. I still, you have your moments, but I find I don't reflect now because I don't really know how to. Does that make sense?
That's so interesting.
Because I'm still, so I'm like, and that doesn't bother me. That's fine. And if I know something's coming up, I will make a note, and I even will set a reminder on my phone to stop, take it in, like just look up, have a look around, and not that I'm in an anxious state. It's just my natural thinking now is just 1 foot forward, no looking back type sort of thing. So so it's it's interesting, eh? Our minds are fucked, eh?
Yeah, definitely, and I guess it is one of those things, particularly people in creative industries. I know it's a cliche to kind of go down that direction, but it seems like it's very common, isn't it? Yeah,
and man, I appreciate you talking about it today. Yeah, it's cool. Good on you. Glad you got it sorted, and onwards and upwards.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to Cara Knife Fight now, and I think I read somewhere that. Did I read or I heard something that initial band, you were like a six piece band or something like that, and then and then you had a dream or something, or you had a thought that it needed to be a duo.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like bullshit, but it's true. The first decision was predicated on the fact I couldn't afford these people anymore, and it was releasing the album that we'd made as a well, I'd made it pretty much on my own, bringing everyone in to kind of, and taken 2 years, and I'd brought in people like Aaron and the bass player Richie and the singers that we had to kind of finish off the songs. And after 2 years, I got to the release tour, and I couldn't afford to take anyone anywhere. And so I just had this dream that I could play drums. I could get a looper, I could loop things, I could play keys with my left hand, and Aaron could play stereo guitars. and it would be this massive sound, and it would be great, and let's just do that. And I woke up and I drew it, in a book, just like it would look like this. And then I just went and fired everybody in one-on-one meetings, like it was redundancy from a non-paying job. I mean,
no, you would no, yeah, with no envelope.
Yeah, no envelope, and I saw everybody one after the other, and then we went on with Aaron, and it was immediate their reaction that happened, because first and foremost it was kind of like it was an art project in a lot of ways. The first thing we did, Big Face, was like 8 minutes long, because it was all about creating something beautiful and interesting and different. It wasn't really about trying to be a chart topper band or whatever. But then, the first, we did like 2 or 3 gigs in Auckland and Christchurch that were really small. And then the very next gig we did was them Crooked Vultures, in Wellington, in an arena. And we have to figure out how we're going to do this shit on a stage with John Paul Jones and Dave Grohl and Josh Homme and Alan Johannes. I didn't even know who he was at the time, but he turned out to be the best musician on the stage. So that was all pretty much a whirlwind, and we set about completely changing everything that we'd done. So it was, I'd already made a bunch of my own music, before that. It was kind of just me learning how to do it, but that was where things kind of actually cemented into place. And I was like, this is the thing I want to do.
Very cool. So you mentioned the name Aaron. So for people that don't know who that is, that's Aaron Tokana. And I've got an Aaron story. Everyone's got an Aaron story, right?
Several usually.
So yep. So when I was at college, or for the people in Australia, that's high school. So college in New Zealand. So I was sixth form, I think it was. Me and another mate from my school joined up with 3 other guys from another local Masterton school, and we formed a band, and we entered the Rock Quest. And for the Australians that don't know what the Rock Quest is, the Smoke-Free Rock Quest, it's been going for years in New Zealand, and it's where school bands get together, and it's a competition, and you have, there's like a regional, there's heats, then there's like a regional final, and then there's like a main final, and then quite often or not, whoever wins it goes on to do great things, and I know that over the years, the Rock Quest has just gotten bigger and bigger. But the year that we went into it, we had our band. It was kind of sort of a Metallica-ish, sort of Tool type, Iron Maiden type sort of band,
Nice.
We went down to Wellington and played the regional heats. And we thought we killed it, right? Smashed it. And then the next band that comes on with these three Māori fellas. So and they all had long hair, and they were all wearing tie-dye t-shirts and jeans, right? And they got on the stage, and they just fucking blew the house off this fucking hall in this school, one Sunday afternoon, right? And they were just unreal. And that was Aaron. Aaron was playing guitar and singing, and then they had a bass player and a drummer. And of course, we ended up getting through to the regional final, which was they had it at the St James Theatre in Wellington. And of course, Aaron his band was called Pride and Joy. So there might be some New Zealanders there that remember that band. They went on and they ended up winning the Rock Quest that year. Of course, they won that regional thing and then they went down to Christchurch and ended up winning it. And so that was they were the first times I'd met Aaron, and I remember chatting to him backstage at the regionals, and just the nicest dude, man. And it was almost like I was instant fan of him as a musician, because he was just phenomenal. Yeah. The first song they did, they came out and they played Surfing with the Alien. Joe Satriani, note for note, and he nailing all the solos, and and then they did a couple of original songs, and one of them was like a ballad sort of thing, and the last song that they did was a song, and I still remember the name of the song, and it was called Euphoria. So I don't know if they ever went and recorded that, but yeah. And then I did see him a few years later there was a drum clinic in Wellington. And he was sitting with Tom Larkin actually at this drum clinic. It might have been Rod Morgenstein in Wellington, the clinic. Yeah. And I think that was the last time I saw him. And then I moved to Australia. Yeah, not too long after that. But Yeah, that's my.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Aaron's.
Yeah, it's funny as well. Like that story there where he's playing Surfing with the Alien note for note, but by the time that I came across him, you could barely get him to remember things that he wrote every time. So he would just play something different on every time, and you'd be like,
"Yeah,
okay, we're going to end it that way. Sure, we'll do that."
Yeah.
I guess that was a long time later. Yeah, when I first met him, he was managing a mini golf course in
Oh, right.
in Christchurch. His wife's family had a golf course. He wasn't playing music. He was kind of managing that, and not a very happy camper at that point, being there, obviously. So he came sort of back into music, not really, not because of me, but it was sort of at the time that I started working with him was when he stepped back into it, and
right.
Yeah, it was like it was a different world when he was playing with you than when anyone else was. So it was incredibly exciting. It was a really exciting time for us as a duo. Obviously really intense because I had my issues and obviously Aaron had his issues, and we were together and we were trying to do all these things, and it was it was pretty wild.
So your were you able to discuss your issues together, or were you just just hashing out your own issues and then creating music?
No, it was kind of, it's one of the weirdest things about us is that we were completely different human beings from completely opposite spectrums of the human existence. He had a completely different life than I had, yet we found a common ground between us that I've never found with anyone else. I loved being around him. We would do 8, 9, 10-hour drives together to get, on tour or whatever, and we'd just talk the entire time. He was, I think he was a lot smarter than a lot of people were let in on. He would play the character that people wanted from him. So a lot of people wanted him just to be, the hoary buzz guy who would just be kind of partying and kind of hanging out. But he was a lot smarter than that. And if people would talk to him about things that were more interesting than that, he would go with them and talk to them. And he was always really interested and curious. So the two of us, we talked a lot about, each other's things, and we were really, he was really kind to me, and we spent a lot of time together. So there was a lot of time where we had to talk about something,
Yeah, so for people that don't know, Aaron died a few years ago. So I'm going to put some, if it's all right with you, for people that don't know who he is, I might put some links to Aaron. People can go and research him and just, I just going back to the Rockquest thing in that St. James Theatre in Wellington that night, I don't reckon there was anyone in the room that walked out of there going, this guy's going to be a superstar.
Yeah.
I mean, he was that good. He was that good. He was that much better than everybody else on that whole, I wouldn't call it a bill, but like every band that came on, he was that band and him were just heads and shoulders above everybody else. Just another league. It was
he should have been.
I think that's why I remember it so well, right?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone that we came across, like when we did Queens of the Stone Age as well, and Damn Crooked Vultures, like Josh Homme, just absolutely loved him. There was an immediate sort of attraction to him. When I did some writing here with Mark Lanigan before I came here, there's another guy who sadly has died, and an extraordinary kind of icon of the music industry, a real iconoclast. But he saw the video of us playing and he was like, this is an incredible combination of people, and this guy is just, he's something else, and he should have been global superstar, and it's a great shame that he wasn't. Yeah,
so Kyra and I fight. So where were we in the timeline of? So it's yourself and Aaron, and then I think it got to a stage there where you wanted to move to LA, and he couldn't come.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff had gone on. We'd come to America a few times by then, and we'd found American management, and we I think we always knew that was going to be pretty much impossible for Aaron to make any move like that. I mean, he had a teenage daughter at that time. She's obviously now she's grown up, but at that time she was just sort of becoming a teenager, and it was like this, not going to work. And also, I don't think that he would have been able to handle something like that anyway. Like he, when things really kicked up in a notch, when things were going really well for him, it was a similar thing that his sort of bipolar would become a really sort of churning beast, and you wouldn't know what was going to happen with him. I mean, sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was horrendous. One of the times it was funny was when he got a cold, and because of his medication, minor illnesses affected him quite a lot. And we were coming back from the States, and we were in the queue to check in and drop our bags and stuff. And he saw there was like a store just behind us in the terminal. And it's like, I'm just going to go and get something for this. I'll just go get some Dayquil, NyQuil, whatever it is. And he went over there and got some stuff, and he came back and he's like, yeah, this stuff should be good. And he'd bought NyQuil, which for people who aren't from the States is the one that you take. It's like, day-night stuff. It's the nighttime stuff. So he'd bought the nighttime stuff, and he chugged this whole bottle of this. And I'm looking at it going, I know what the outcome of this is going to be, but, what am I going to do about it? And he drank this, and he slowly starts to just nod off in the queue to get in. And so I'm like, fuck, if this guy actually just completely passes out, because these things affected him quite a lot, right, I'm going to have to carry him. Will we even get through? They'll probably just arrest us or something. And he was just really on the nod, trying to not look like a junkie moving through the airport. It was horrendous. And we got him on the plane, and he was out for the entire trip back. He drank like a whole bottle of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so you're over in LA, and Aaron can't come. So what?
Well, I won the APRA Professional Development Award in 2013, which gave me the funds to come here to write and to finish that first record, because him and I had made a couple of EPs, and we were supposed to go to the UK to kind of make a record, and we had a label kind of sort of interested after our South by Southwest shows, and Aaron just couldn't get on the plane. He just couldn't make that trip. So if I look back on it, that was probably the time, like 2012, when if he had gone on that plane and we had gone to play The Great Escape and made this record in Wales that we were going to make, we had a producer and a studio all lined up. Our American management had figured it all out. I look back at that time and think if we got on that plane, both our lives would be very different, I think, because the label we had was a powerful indie that would have been really good, but it just didn't work out. So we were left with a missed opportunity, and sometimes that sliding door just means you never get that again. And, we never did. I made the rest of that record kind of with him and without him. I think there's 6 guitarists on that first Knife Fight record. Aaron plays a few songs, and then there's a bunch of other people, and I was kind of it was made in Australia and America and New Zealand. And I came to LA to kind of do some writing for it, and Aaron loved LA. I was never an LA guy. I was a jazz guy. I was a New York guy. That's where I wanted to be. But I realized pretty quickly that I'd gotten too old for the cold. I couldn't do the New York cold, and so LA just was like the next best option. So 2014, I just ended up moving here. The record came out the following year. Aaron had pretty much finished recording with me, and we were still great friends, but I had to reform the band here, which, I'm only looking for one dude, but it's a pretty significant position for me. So landed here and had to figure it out from there, basically, and there was still a lot of stuff going on in New Zealand and Australia. We went back to tour the Shehad, and then the following year was Carnival across Australia. So it was a lot still going on at that point for the band. So it was an interesting time.
And is there anything else sort of going on musically, or is Kyra Knife Fight, that's it, that's everything?
Yeah, by that stage it had kind of become that, which it was pretty insidious, really. I hadn't planned it that way. I'd never wanted to lose working for other people and doing a lot of stuff, but you just sort of get pigeonholed into something, and people think, he's busy doing that, because we're not going to get him for something, and we were kind of an it band for a minute. We supported everybody that was coming through, and we were doing these big stuff, but we'd never really delivered anything ourselves. And people thought of us as kind of like they should be on rock radio kind of band, which is never what we were. So when we didn't get those songs that went into the rock radio, a lot of that momentum kind of slowed down. So coming here, it was really just about that band and trying to see what we could get going here with our American management, knowing that we'd probably done everything we could in New Zealand. And
so what was that then? What was that sort of next step? So you've done and you've released the first album. You've moved. By now you've settled on your new guitar player.
Yeah, it was just about trying to get opportunities here and trying to find booking agents, and our manager at the time was trying to find label support and things like this, and we just couldn't really find stuff that would sort of fall into place. We did a bunch of our own tours, and we were, my bandmate, has been part of the Black Eyed Peas for, nearly 3 decades, but they kind of weren't playing at that time. So he was just working with me. But then when they sort of came back, he got busy with that as well. So we've been juggling that kind of thing. And he was working with Fergie at the time when she was still pretty massive. So he had a lot of contacts that he thought would kind of help, but we sort of quickly realized that, those worlds are very, very different, very disparate groups of people. And it was just a lot of slogging, really. And I think, the real strike time for us was 2012. And, you really only get that one opportunity. And so after that, it was a lot of time spent trying to get back to where we were at that point in terms of success. And, we just never really were able to get up to that level again.
Yep. So we're 10 plus years on now in 2025. And, you've said that you haven't shelved the band. You've just, you've backed it off and you're doing your other things. And you mentioned about a video that you released on your Instagram just not too long ago, well, a couple of days ago, and it was recorded at Studio 606, and it's Dave Lombardo. Now, Dave Lombardo is the ex-drummer of Slayer, right, for people that don't know that.
He's a founding member of Slayer.
He sure was, yeah. And he was a massive influence on me when I was at high school as a drummer.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was cool to see that. I was watching that. I've only seen at this stage the little Instagram short, but I know it's on YouTube, so I can go and watch the whole thing. And all you can really see of Dave in that little snip. You're singing and you're kind of and he's just sort of tapping away on a hi-hat. So I'm looking forward to going to look at that YouTube video and seeing how that sort of evolves. All right, so how did that come about, and how did that relationship with Dave Lombardo sort of, end up on your radar?
That's a classic relationship of immigrants. He's of Cuban extraction. I think he was born here, like George was, but their families are Cuban. So down the years, George has always been a rock guy, even though he was in, the only hip hop thing he'd ever really done was Black Eyed Peas, and he joined them right before they did their first tour of Europe when they were a real small band playing to like 100 cap rooms, and he just wanted to go to see Europe because he'd never been. And then he just never left, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that meant they'd often end up, in backstage areas with huge bands as well, as they became a huge band. And so he started to see Slayer around the place and Dave. And they got chatting that they were both Cubans, and they've been friends for a very long time. And we really wanted to start doing stuff utilizing double drummers. We did a show in Vegas with Matt Gasker, which was fascinating.
Yes, I saw that video. Yes, that's awesome. That's great. What a player, eh? Far out.
Yeah, and before Matt joined Animals as Leaders, he'd actually played in one of George's solo projects.
Right.
When he first came to LA, so they've had a long-standing relationship too. So, we did that thing, which was great, and we would dearly love to get over, because Matt lives in Nashville now, so we'd love to get over to Nashville and film and track over there, but, time and money. The one in LA was Dave, and we did a cover of War Pigs, which Dave just absolutely murders. It's incredible what he does on that. So we're going to release that at some point. But this one is our song, Lighting Fires on the Run. And we actually sent it to Dave and said, what do you think about this? And he sent back kind of an edited version of it. And the edit actually became the song. We were like, that's the way the song should be. He'd identified parts that he thought were cooler, and we were like, great. And we'd already recorded at Grohl's place, which is 606. We did this couple of records we've got at the moment. We recorded those there. And that's what we're releasing at the moment. And we just went in and, did 2 days with Dave and with Stu Ham, the bass player as well, who's, another legend of the industry. And it was incredible, man, because Dave is a really, really lovely man. He's like 60 now, and he is just a Rolls Royce. His engine is extraordinary. And you watch him with Mr. Bungle or anything, and he's playing like a 22-year-old. I don't really know how he does that.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible experience to double drum and get that whole thing in that studio. I mean, that studio was amazing, and having him there, it was definitely a bucket list thing. And I was super lucky to have that experience.
That's cool. Now, just going back to that video of you and Matt Garsco, and I read your little blurb of that, and you're talking about Matt's flow and that kind of stuff. And then I went back and watched that video again, and man, you're matching him, man. I was like going, you're kind of writing it like you were kind of underplaying yourself, but fuck, you shouldn't. You were awesome. I thought it was phenomenal.
Oh, thanks, man.
Just so much. You've just got such like this rolling power. His is more sort of seems like it comes from his core and he's kind of throwing out, but yours seems like it's much more. What's the word? I mean, you talked about his flow, but I think you've got your own flow too and your own power. So
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, like Matt's thing is that he's an alpha drummer. He's jacked for one thing. He's just massive guy,
massive.
And like he has a level of he's obviously because he's from a very different world than me. Like he plays in that sort of extreme kind of sort of math metal, I guess a lot of it is, and it's really interesting what he does. But obviously, it's a whole other thing compared to what I do. But one of the really great moments there was, I'd met him a few times, I'd hung out with him a little bit, but that was really the first time I actually spent a considerable period of time with him because he came to Vegas and stayed at George's place, and we hung out. And after the set, he was kind of sitting with me and he was saying, "Man, I'm a fan of what you do. I'm a real big fan." And I'm like, that's very high praise from Matt because he's very exacting on himself and he's also very exacting on things he listens to. He's got really high standards and he appreciated that I'm doing something very different than him, and he could still see the value in it, which doesn't happen as often as you would like with people who at that sort of high level. If you're not really in their world, you're kind of shit. And he's not like that.
And he would be seeing so many musicians and talking to so many musicians all the time, right?
Yeah.
No, good on you, man. That's good. Much deserved praise. Yeah, so that's awesome. So going back to 606 and watching some other videos, there was a video that you put up there, and you're actually playing some of Taylor Hawkins' drums in the studio.
Yeah.
Right. So was that before or after he died?
It was before he died. I mean, it was really like he was actually also, we were working on getting him to sing with me on one of the songs because obviously Taylor is a great singer and had his own bands as well. And unfortunately, he died before we could make that happen. But yeah, they were very gracious. Everybody there was really gracious, letting us use the stuff that was there. And some of those drums are actually really beautiful. There was an 80-year-old vintage Leedy kick drum that was like maybe a 24, 26. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that room is extraordinary. And that console obviously is amazing too. So that combination is wonderful.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about Young Winona. So that's a band with yourself and your wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was listening to all those tracks today at work before we sat down and yeah, man, tell me a little bit about that project.
That was really great actually because that's with Jeff Maddock, who was he played bass in that band. He was the other half of Golden Horse main songwriting team, because obviously I played in Golden Horse for a long time too, and Jeff moved here before me. He's been here for 20-something years. So he came and played bass with us on that. That band doesn't exist anymore because one of the things I really appreciate about my wife, Cass, is that she doesn't fuck around with shit if it doesn't serve her or it's not really what she wants. She's out. She's got no nostalgia to stuff. Like she came here as an actress and went a few auditions and was like, I hate this. And then went back to playing music again because she'd grown up as a musician. That's where I met her actually. I played drums on her first recordings. A friend of mine got me to come play drums for her, and that's where we met. She started playing music again here, and she is an incredible songwriter, and guitarist and singer. She's just one of those people who can do anything she wants. And she ran that band for a couple of years. We did a bunch of great recordings, and she made all the videos. We did a lot of gigs in LA and kind of got a following of things and worked with a label here and did some stuff. And then she was like, this industry is shit. and it's not going to get any better. And so fuck this. I don't want to do this. And she went and got herself a mentor as a tattoo artist, found a mentor and started being a tattoo artist. And she's been doing that for like a bunch of years now. And that's her job now. That's what she really loves to do. And it's something it makes sense to her. So she just, she didn't even finish the album that we were making. We had this.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's like an unfinished album. She's like, nah, I don't care. I don't want to do it. Wasting my time. I'm like, I respect that.
Yeah, I respect that too. That's great. Fantastic. But yeah, just from what I heard of that, I was listening to a bunch of those songs today, and it's cool, man. It's got a cool vibe.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we'll do a gig at some point, hopefully, because she picks up the guitar and she can still play it. She just needs to get her calluses back to survive a gig. But hopefully we can talk her into doing something. Maybe for my 50th birthday, I might be able to talk her into like, let's do a gig, for
That's
it.
Great. That's awesome. Fantastic. And had you sort of gigged besides the work the gigs that you'd played with her before, with her as a songwriter, have you ever sort of played in other types of bands together, or was it just that and then this project?
No, I mean, in New Zealand, she didn't do, after she did those early recordings, I'm talking like, because we've been together since 2006, so those recordings were in 2006. She didn't do anything after like 28 or 2008, maybe 2009. She became an actress because she got a degree in musical theatre. That's when I met her. She was doing that. So she went on and started acting and had some roles in some plays in Auckland and Christchurch. And then when we were coming here, she's like, I'll go be an actress there. So she actually hadn't done any music at a really sort of professional level in New Zealand at all. And she came here and just formed that band. And that was the only stuff we did together. And I guess that band was probably around for 3-4 years, We did a lot of stuff here, and it was really fun, and it was great to work with her. I do really love those songs. It is kind of a shame that their band ended, but she's right. It is a pretty shitty business. And she was smart to get into something where, she's like, I do it and someone pays me and then I go home. And you're like, yeah, that's what music is lacking.
Yeah. All right, Nick, bro, I've really enjoyed this. It's been cool hanging with you, man, and I've been looking forward to this chat since we connected, and looking forward to seeing what you develop out of the art projects that you're thinking about.
For sure, yeah. It'll be exciting. I'm hoping I can mix everything, the singing, the bass keyboard, the looping, the stuff. I bought some new tools and I'm trying to figure out how to do it all, and we'll kind of see what happens with it. God, it's so annoying to have to film stuff, for the gram, knowing that you kind of have to do that. But I just want to practice and get it all ready. But my wife's like, you've got to keep filming stuff, so I've got to start doing some of that again too. But it's
It does look good. It doesn't look like it's laboured. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't look like, because you've just said that you don't enjoy it. It doesn't look like that. Looks like you're into it,
Yeah, I mean, I usually am into it when it goes well. It's just more the idea that I'd rather just be practicing this shit and working on it. But I'm like, I've got to make a video now. So you got to get dressed up, you got to make yourself look as good as you can, because, I'm too old for that now. If you're 22, it doesn't matter. But when you're 48, you've got to put in some effort. And because of my day job, I was doing a lot of my practice between 4:30 in the morning and 9:30. So some of those videos are made at like 5 in the morning and 6 in the morning, and nobody looks their best at that time in the morning. So, that was another element.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Nick, take it easy, brother.
You too, man.
See you, bye.